Well, hi, everybody. This is Sam, the host of the podcast, Why Are You Sober? And as always, I am so glad and grateful you all are here. So, this podcast is a place where sober addicts can come and tell their stories, tell what their addiction was, where it brought them, how they got sober, and then why they continue to choose sobriety today, which is why it's called Why Are You Sober? If you happen to be a sober addict and would like to come on and tell your story, I would love that. So you can get in touch with me at sam@whyareyoussober.org, or you can go to my website, which is whyareyoussober.org, and connect with me there. And that's where you can also find other information about resources, especially in case you are somebody who is looking to get sober. If that also happens to be the case, you can also get in touch with me. Maybe you just have some questions, just have some thoughts. Maybe you know someone who's sober and just need someone to talk to. You can definitely get in touch with me as well. I would really love that. So last week, we had my friend Barbara on, and I got to tell you, it was so great to reconnect with her after such a long period of time and to just come together on our joint stories of sobriety. That has been one of the greatest gifts on this side of sobriety, is the connections that I've made that have just been so amazing, and connections with people who I thought were gone in my life and are now back again. That has been such a joyful experience to have. And this podcast has just been so wonderful. So this week, we have another friend of mine from my Gordon College days, and her name is Kory. Kory's story is a little different, but as always, I love that about all of our stories. And her story definitely has some periods of relapse, which I just encourage her as always. And she is an amazing spirit and person, and she is constantly persevering through stuff. But she is also a joyful light of a person to have in my life. So I hope you enjoy her story as much, again, as I enjoyed talking to her and reconnecting. So I'll start us off with the serenity prayer. Good and gracious friend, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. So glad you've come on to the podcast to tell your story. So you and I connected back at Gordon College, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And what were you just a year behind me? I mean, I walked in 2004.
Yeah, because I would have walked in like 2005.
Yeah. Okay.
But I had to leave school. But
yeah. So we were just just a year apart. But I remember being in the deaf ministry with you.
yes.
Among other things, but yes, definitely the deaf ministry and working with you in chapel and stuff. So that was great. So so basically I usually start out by just asking people, what is your addiction?
So I'm consider myself an addict and an alcoholic. With the alcohol, and I also was addicted to medications, like prescription medications.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when did you kind of start doing that? Like, when did things kind of kick off?
The very first time was probably I was like 15, 16, but it really got bad after like college.
Okay. But you started like experimenting with stuff back in like high school?
Yeah.
And what was growing up like for you?
Oh, I lived here. My mom, my dad, my brother, and it was just the four of us. And, growing up was a pretty good childhood. Then when I was 15, is pretty much when things changed because I was sexually assaulted. So
well, I'm sorry to hear that.
No.
Yeah.
That's okay. You know what? Things happen, right? For a reason.
Yeah.
And so that's when my drinking really took off, was around then.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how much would you say that you were experimenting back in high school?
It started, with parties and just getting pretty hammered at parties, and then just it kind of went from there. It was like it got to a point where I was every day needing to drink, needing to take something.
And it got to that point in high school already?
No,
Oh,
no,
no. No, that was
that was
after
further
college.
down the road.
Okay. Okay, so just in high school you were just experimenting. And then so in college were you doing much experimenting then too?
Yeah, I was hanging out with people that were doing a lot of OxyContin, and
Mm.
definitely the drinking just continued. It was my mom. Um, her father was an alcoholic, so I wouldn't call her an alcoholic, but my uncle, and she's got nine brothers and sisters, and
Mhm.
kind of runs in the family. And so I would drink with my uncle. I would drink,
Mm.
it would be, it was there, and I would take advantage wherever it was.
Yeah. Yeah, so tell me. So how did it all come? Yeah. So what was your drinking like? Like tell me your story.
All right, yeah. So like in high school, I would drink, and I liked how I felt.
Mhm.
I liked the fact I wasn't feeling, actually, would probably be the best way to put it. And it just kind of spun off. I dabbled in it in high school, but in college, definitely, when I was like, yeah, I don't want to deal with life. This is how I learned to deal with things and put my emotions away. And um, I would either take a pill to sleep, or I would, drink to, numb my feelings, or just to get through the day. And it just kind of got to the point, even up into adulthood. Um, I was working, I'm a nurse, and I was working at an office, and I was just so gone. I went into work, and by the grace of God, I had never hurt anybody. I had never been in an accident with all the driving drunk that I did. Um, so, but until that day when I was like uh, taking a patient's blood pressure and totally missed that it was sky high, off the charts.
Mm.
And I said he was fine. And he walked out of the office and had a heart attack.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that's when I finally put down the bat, and I was like, okay, this
Mm.
guy almost died. It was my fault. I need to get some help. So
Mm.
that day, I literally went to our case manager who was working, and I told her what was going on. I went to my PCP, and they both worked really hard to get me into a program. Um, I went to McLean Hospital. They got me
Mm.
in there,
Mhm.
and I was there to detox because I was also, dangerously, when you have so much Klonopin in your system, you're
Mm.
at risk of seizures, and you're at risk of high blood pressure yourself. And so I went there, and I was there for 5 or 6 days. And then from there, I went down to the Cape, and I
Mm.
was at a place called Recovering Champions.
Mm. Yeah.
They said, you'd be here 30 to 40 days. And I was like, okay. And it actually ended up being almost probably 50, 60.
Mm. Wow.
They just kept saying, you're not ready. And um, but I've also battled eating disorders.
Mhm.
And so when, one addiction, you know, you can't have the drink anymore. You can't deal with things that way. I guess what happened was I kind of transferred addictions and went back to my eating disorder. And because I wasn't eating and they saw that while I was still in the rehab, I got sent to yet another program at Walden. And it's like, but in all that, I've definitely learned, how, because, when I got discharged from there, I was there for another week. So total, I was in like three different hospitals in like 3 different months. And I came home and started going to AA. I definitely was hitting meetings, and, got a sponsor, started working steps, and learning how to deal with life without having to do all that, because the way I was going was not good. The fact that I almost killed someone else because I was just so out of it and not there for my patients, it was like that was my bottom right there. It was like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a sobering event to have happen in your life. I mean, that's terrifying for me. Yeah, just thinking about that. So when you were heaviest in your drinking,
Hmm.
what were you drinking about? Like, what were you coping? What were you coping over or dealing with that, was just too much?
Well, a lot of it is because, this is, of course, a lot of the work over the years that I've done with therapy and everything, but I didn't know at the time that I was just stuffing the feelings down from the sexual assault,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
on top of that, just growing up and never dealing with that, and then just everything else, all the pains of growing up. This is how I learned to deal with life when something bad came up, something that I didn't know how to handle emotionally. That's how I handled it.
Yeah, that you trained yourself that this is how I cope with this. Like
Yeah.
the shove, yeah, I shove it down and I just cope with it with feeling that way. Yeah, I definitely understand and resonate that, especially with my journey with my sexuality of just
Mm.
especially being at Gordon in the early 2000s, and I know that there were a few students who were not necessarily out, but definitely, um, you know, uh, present and making
Mm.
themselves known at Gordon at that time. Um, but that's exactly why I was, cope to going to alcohol to cope with it.
Mm.
And yeah, similar to you, mine didn't really start until college and until I could actually like legally drink, and I was like, buying it for myself. That's when it really like took off.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So before you got to that point where you finally, you know, um, gave up and you gave
Yep.
in, were like how were your family or your friends, or were they noticing anything? Was anyone like asking you questions or mentioning stuff to you or anything like that?
Yeah, it's like definitely was in denial because I would have people say, we're concerned about you. Definitely they voiced, no one set up a, intervention like they have on TV or anything, but I've definitely had many friends and family being like, we're concerned about how much you drink. We're concerned about how much you like hide away in your room and sleep. No one really knew about the pills because I would just take those, but they would know that I was not acting myself.
Yeah.
Um, and they would just be like, something's off. Have you ever talked to a therapist? Constantly people like that. Um, and it's funny that I hear now that I just thought I was so good at hiding my feelings and hiding, but a lot of people did see. It's like if I talk to them now, they're like, yeah, you think you were hiding it, but we know you were hurting, but it's like if someone doesn't want help, there's not much you can do
Yeah.
except let them know you're there.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of friends that did that. And of course,
Mm.
I thought I was the loneliest person in the world when I really was not. Yeah, you know,
Yeah,
I
isn't
had,
that it's one of the biggest lies that this disease tells us is,
yeah,
because yeah, totally. I have the same understanding of like of remembering all the people who were around me at that time and not feeling like I was alone, 100%.
yep,
Yeah,
yeah, makes you feel worthless. That you just, what you do is not worth anything. And that's the depression, and that I'm definitely dually diagnosed. And so, when I got sober, I was also compounded that with I got my gastric bypass surgery. So trying that was a lot to
mm.
take on at one time.
Yeah,
Um,
and that they definitely tell you in your early sobriety, don't take too many things on.
oh yeah,
Don't make too
oh
many
yeah,
changes. So yeah, so
crazy,
that's a big change to make in your first year. Like, yeah,
oy vey.
yeah. And so how was that for you? So you said it was difficult.
It was challenging, definitely, because it was like trying to balance, the big changes that my physical body and mentally, it's like the um the physical part because I was just eating less. So also my stomach was smaller. So and I did go out and drink after the surgery because I was like, you know what? I heard people can drink after the surgery, no problem, which could not be further from the truth. I
Oh,
was
I'm
like,
sure. Yeah.
I was so sick after that. I was like, I literally thought that I was dying. And the doctor even was like, I don't know what you were thinking. I mean, you sat through these classes and we said, alcohol, definitely not, especially right out of surgery, in the first couple months. And um, they even said no soda, the carbonation and things like that. So alcohol,
Oh,
definitely.
yeah.
And, but you would think that's enough to stop an alcoholic, but it's not.
Mm-mm.
I, I stopped for a while. I got about 7 months sobriety and then I had a relapse. Um, with, you know, diet pills and going back to taking medications again because I fell back into that depression where I was like, I was doing okay. I got in that mindset and that my disease just took over. I stopped going to meetings,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I stopped taking my medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a relapse then. And then I got 3 years in October this past year.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had a relapse again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Same thing. I let my guard down, and I'm working really hard with my sponsor now because
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing. I gotten that too comfortable. Oh, I got 3 years. I'm good, but you can't. You need to stay vigilant with this disease because it is just doing push-ups in the parking lot waiting for you. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man, I'm so proud that you just came right back quickly.
Mm,
Because there's something I have heard many people say of thinking about a relapse is like that you're going to be able to do it again, but you don't know if you're going to be able to come back,
exactly.
you know? And but yeah, I'm really grateful that you were able to come back and do it quickly. Um, so yeah, so you just weren't going to meetings and you got really comfortable and you were just like, I'm good, I can do this.
Yeah,
And yeah, yep,
I've got 3 years under my belt. I can do this. And it's like, and now I definitely pay attention when I hear in meetings, especially um, old timers that are like, yeah, I still think of a drink occasionally. Just
yeah,
it doesn't leave, but you need to, not let your tools get rusty,
yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely, like I was even at just some friend's house this weekend and, the husband brought out a bottle of whiskey and, poured some glasses for a couple people and, and they know all about me and, but I'm grateful that they're comfortable enough to, just be themselves in front of me. But yeah,
hmm
I mean, there's definitely no question that I definitely look at that and go, yeah, okay, I remember, and
Mm,
I'm like,
yep.
mm-hmm, I remember what it felt like. Um, and yeah, it is definitely the thing of like, we can't let our guard down and we got to just be vigilant and be doing stuff like this, like talking to other addicts and,
hmm
sharing our stories and hearing from other people. Um, so why is sobriety and why are you chasing sobriety so hard? What is so important about it for you?
Um, well, one, I lost my dad 3 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and that was at the beginning of my sobriety as well. I
Yeah.
was only 4 months sober
Wow.
when he passed, and I just think of him a lot. That he would want this for me. He wouldn't want me to live the way I was living, um,
Mm.
and be so upset and so like down on myself. And he wanted the best for me. Him and I had a rocky relationship a lot of the time, but I know at the end of the day, he wanted what was best for me and would do whatever he had to do. And, he is inspiring me,
Yeah.
and I want to do it for myself and be there for my nephews and
Mm.
it's like, and I know when I don't go to meetings and how I feel, I start going on that downward slope. And it's like, when I don't reach out, it's like, that's when I get into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I need it for myself to be able to, this is like a new addiction. It's like a good addiction. It's like, I have to be at meetings because this is how I get through.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I also am like, I make sure that I go to at least one meeting a week, like just to make sure that I'm like touching base with people and
Hmm.
because, gratefully with this podcast I get to talk to a lot of addicts. So I feel very filled. And
Yeah.
but I also know the importance of, what, I'm filled, I have to go give. And I also need some time that I can sit and reflect and not maybe talk.
Yes. Yes.
Just listen to other people. Um, I know the importance of that, but also like I know for myself, like that walking and physical exercise has become a very important thing for me. I mean, and especially just walking. Like, I used to go to the gym and do all that stuff, and I've been like, you know what? I don't care anymore. I just want to like be healthy and feel happy. And so,
Yes.
I power walk a lot and I do like 5 miles a day. But I know that when I start to not do that and I maybe skip a meeting and I'm like, oh, stuff is starting to creep back in, and I'm
Mm.
like, I got to wake up tomorrow morning and just go for my walk. That's the first thing I have to do. And I just have to get it done. And then I got to go to, um, I have those, check marks in my life too of when I need like, okay, I might need to check back in with a couple people, you know.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. So yes, that's a
Life.
lot. That was a lot at the beginning of your sobriety to have to deal with.
Oh, it was. But
Yeah.
coming out of it, I mean, it's a struggle every day. I will miss my dad. I will, but I can't let it take me out.
Yeah.
I have to deal with it in a healthier way. And if anything, I've definitely reflected a lot with people I've lost in addiction, friends that I've lost to
Oh yeah.
addiction,
Oh yeah.
uh, my dad. And it's like, you just never know who's leaving in the morning and not coming home at night, and who's going to pick up, and it's like, life is precious. And it's I say it every day. It's like, I just have to treat people with kindness, treat them the way I want to be treated, and know that, like, because you don't know what inner demons people are battling with. And
Mm-hmm.
just a simple hi, how are you, can really, lift someone up.
Amen. Yeah.
Yeah. I just, I don't want to be putting people down and being a cause of someone's bad day. And, I try not to be. I'm a human and I do fail, but,
Yeah.
you know, definitely a work in progress.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Man, that was some good stuff. So
Hmm.
what are you most diligently working on at this stage of your sobriety after just coming back from a relapse? What are you focused on?
My sponsor and I are working on, because I used to just back out of things. I would always lie and be like, yeah, I would never commit to things. I would commit, but then I would back out. And then, so I'm working a lot on, we started back, I got it to like step 4
Mm-hmm.
before my relapse. And she's like, you know what? Let's start over. We're starting over at step 1.
Mm.
And so I just finished step 1 with her again. And we're really working on, me committing to people and following through on things. And I'm
Mm.
actually doing 90 meetings in 90 days right now.
Oh, cool.
Um, that started back again because, I said I was going to do it back in November when I relapsed, and it didn't happen. And she's like, when are you going to get serious about this? And you know what? I don't like being called on my stuff, but it needed to be said.
Yeah.
It needed to be said. And
Yeah.
it's like, I'm really grateful that this lady is in my life, because she is not afraid to call me out on it and be like, listen, this is what I've done. This is what I'm suggesting you do. You don't have to take it, but you know what? I'm strongly suggesting, it's
Yeah.
like, you know,
Uh,
and, but I've definitely learned that what she says is worth definitely, being open-minded to and having the
mhm.
willingness to do what she says, because it's like she's been there. There's no alcoholic or addict that you can talk to that's going to be really shocked. You think you have the worst story or the worst thing, and it's like they look at you, you're like, yeah, okay, I've done that, like,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Or they're like, or I know someone who did something even worse than that. So they're looking at you like, yeah, it's not that bad. Like,
right?
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that sounds awesome. I'm really glad for you, and I'm really really pleased, and just so grateful that you are choosing this life of sobriety,
Yeah.
and putting yourself first and making yourself important. Because there's nothing wrong with being self-centered.
No.
We need to center ourselves and take care of ourselves and be good to ourselves. It's when we move the self-centeredness to selfishness that that's when
Yeah.
things start to go bad.
Absolutely.
And like what you're working on with your sponsor, the just committing to things, but also, if you can't, then just say you can't and be okay with that. And if just be good to yourself. If you don't have to volunteer for everything. Like,
Right.
yeah.
That got in the way a while too, because I would find myself saying, yes, I'll work this extra shift. Yes, I'll work overtime. Yes, this, I would yes myself literally to death with
Yeah.
my bosses. And when I finally, because I realized that was like basically yet another addiction. I was going to work and staying late, so I didn't have to come home and deal with anything else.
Yeah.
And it's like that's not really healthy either. I'm like, holy moly, that's what I'm doing exactly.
Yeah.
And so when I finally started setting up boundaries, telling my boss no, they literally looked at me and said, "Did you just say no?" I was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah,
Yes, I did. And I mean that.
I mean that. I can't work tonight. I'm going home and I'm gonna just probably just sit on my butt. To be completely honest, I don't
Yeah.
have to work the shift because you asked.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like they have to step back and realize, and I've done that with a couple of people. People have done it with me, set boundaries because when I was in active addiction, I've built up a distrust with some people, and it's going to take time to get it back. But you know what?
Hmm. Hmm.
The people who are going to stick around are worth it. It's like it's it's a great program. Like the more I'm just getting like into it and getting involved and getting in service work, I'm like, these people are amazing.
Hmm.
What these people have overcome in life, and it's just I work as a nurse, and I know some nurses that they see people that are coming in and on these medications or do you know what MAT is?
No.
Medication assisted treatment. So they're on like a program. So they come
Yeah.
in and they're on oxycodone, but they're being monitored, like urine samples and things like that, to make sure they're taking the right dose, the right amount when they need to take it.
Yeah.
And these nurses that are like, oh, well, the drug addict's coming in again, or this or that. It's like, how do you even stand yourself for like just passing judgment on this guy that you don't even know what's going on? You
Yeah.
don't know his story. You don't. And I think
Yeah.
that just makes me a
Where's
more
the
compassionate nurse.
Yeah, where's the empathy? Like,
Right.
yeah, I know. Sometimes I feel like empathy is one of the biggest things that is lacking in our world right now.
A hundred
And
percent.
it just breaks my heart. But yeah, you're right. Like, come on. That they're a person too. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Everybody's got a story.
Everybody's got a story. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Kory, I am so glad that you are back and just loving it, and I'm really grateful that you came on and told your story, and we're just honest and vulnerable. But like, just come. you telling your story, it just was awesome how comfortable you were. Just being like, you know what, this happened, and I'm working on it, and I'm really proud of you for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as always, thank you for listening to the podcast, and especially to my friend Kory's story. Kory, I just want to say thank you again for coming on, for being so honest and so real about where you are in your life and what's going on. And just, I'm going to keep encouraging you to call me or call your friends, or just be the person you are, and let us know if you ever need help again. That's the wonderful thing about this podcast and these stories and the connections I've been making. It's just getting in touch with people and being available for people, because that's what this is about. It's about community. To get through sobriety, you need community. Man, I can't tell you enough how much you actually need community out there. And I know relapse is a part of a lot of people's stories. It happens to them, and it's real, and it's true, and it's hard, and it sucks. And I've known people who have relapsed after 20 years of sobriety. It's possible for anybody, and that's a terrifying thing. But that's why, we keep doing what we're doing. We keep going with the program. We keep calling people. We make sure that people know that they are loved and cared for, and that they can reach out to us when they need us. That's the whole point. So all that to say, thank you again for being here. Next week is going to be a very special episode. It's going to be a little different, but I hope that you join us. And as always, if you are a sober addict and want to come on, I would love to have your story. I would love for you to tell your story. So you can get in touch with me at my website, whyareyousober.org, or you can email me at sam@whyareyousober.org. And as always, you can find me on all the social medias, Instagram, Facebook, all of it. So with that, I thank you all. I hope everybody has a wonderful week. I am heading off to go do a half marathon with my family in San Diego, so I can't wait. And I'm wishing you all a whole lot of peace, love, and joy. Bye.